Welcome, everybody, to another episode of The Real Podcast. We are here today on an amazingly beautiful sunny day, hanging out back. This is Nico. I'm Eric. We're your hosts, and we are bringing a awesome guest with us today. I think a lot of people have a ton of questions, and I know it's talk of the town right now and where I live at and where I coach at, but about the sports complex that could be coming up. And we have Matt Marshall here. He's the general manager. So Matt, just give us a little bit about your history and who you are and what this position looks like for you in the future.
Yeah. So, I mean, this position is one that is really intriguing to me just because, I grew up in this area, went to Spring Grove High School, have been around athletics my entire life. It's always been a passion for me. My grandfather was a coach, college athlete. Awesome. My dad continued that lineage, teacher, coach, college athlete. Basically I would say about 98% of what I've learned in life have probably come through athletics. Yeah. Either my participation or just watching and just, hearing that. And I've been running around practice fields, gymnasiums since I can remember. That's where I was spending my time. I looked at those high school athletes my dad was coaching like they were, a LeBron or, whoever, Tom Brady, and that was my roots. That's what I was always around. That's what I was passionate about. And, I always like to say that I think, athletic sports, I think it's one of the best vehicles to teach life lessons. So for me, work-wise, I've always said that I'm going to be able to do something where I felt like I was maybe just checking a box and kind of going in and, getting through the day and then punching out. Something that you have a chance to make a true impact and through a vehicle that's, I'm passionate about. It just made a ton of sense. To jump back to my history, so I went to Spring Grove High School, ended up going to East Stroudsburg, continued to play football there, and had an education degree. So once I got out of school,
I met you as an athletic director at Suburban.
Yes,
So you were in the school. How long were you teaching? For?
So once I got out of college, I jumped right into like a long-term sub position. So graduated in December, so it was one of those like awkward periods where kind of finish out the school year.
Sure.
During that time, I got a personal training job just to kind of supplement cash.
Sure.
And, really kind of started to grow in that world. And, summertime came around, had an opportunity to have a full-time teaching job, but also was offered a full-time position in, more on the fitness end. And I had always kind of had in the back of my mind that, as much as there were some positives about education, I was familiar with it. My dad did it. I always liked the private side of business, being able to work and kind of reap some of those benefits. So I actually went the fitness route. Okay. And that kind of evolved over a couple of years where I ended up being a director of fitness of a location. And really kind of expanded on that for about 3 to 4 years. And then organically, same kind of thing as, the position I'm in now. Through relationships, I was approached about being the athletic director at York Suburban, went through the interview process there and ended up, being accepted for the job and taking it. So did that for 7 years, which is where we definitely crossed paths.
Yeah, for sure.
So both those things that, eventually, as I'm sure we'll get into the conversation, were a solid foundation and background for a lot of what we'll do at the sports complex. But, being an athletic director, it was a great experience, a lot of moving parts, a lot of unique dynamics there. As I mentioned, I wanted to get out of kind of that public education space originally, found myself back in it, kind of justify it as it was a different role, not in the classroom on a daily basis, kind of, more on that passion side of the athletics. But I still kind of found myself, thinking about that private side of business, being able to control some different things and just, even just hours, that's a tough position where, I was getting home probably at 10:30, 4 nights a week, a lot of stuff on the weekends. My wife was probably ready for me to transition out of that about 5 years ago.
So understandable.
Not that I was actively looking, but, John and Jeff Inch, the owners of Inch&Co, who I work for, just great guys, and actually met them through like some training I was still doing on the side and through some relationships and friends. And, I can remember it was probably 2.5 years ago at this point that, Jeff kind of threw out, hey, we're thinking about bringing a sports complex to York. Is that something that you ever have any interest in? And, as a very kind of passive conversation, I was like, that's a big lift. Like, we'll see if that actually, see if that happens. Yeah, it sounds great. Sounds great. But, let's get back on the bench, kind of thing.
Yeah,
so,
sure.
But yeah, then things, as you know them, they're aggressive, they're shakers, they're movers, things started moving. And, the more I learned about them, the company, and this sounds weird to some people, as much as I was closely ingrained to athletics as being an athletic director, I felt like this position actually had the opportunity to make a little bit more of an impact.
Sure.
There's some parameters around the public education system. There's just, it takes
Painful
a while to get
sometimes,
things
yeah.
done. It can be frustrating, and that's not to knock it. It's just the way that is. There's bureaucracy to it. If you see something that you want to change, sometimes you got to go through board approvals. You got, and it takes 3 months where, in this world now, it might take 3 minutes.
Yeah.
So it just moves at a different pace, and I think having some of the my vision aligned with what theirs was as well, and I just think there's a true need for it. So the club sports world and some of those things are just in a crazy environment right now.
Nutty,
to be able to have an impact of doing those things the right way and bring that to an area that I'm passionate about that can impact the community and just also the youth. Is just something that kind of became a no-brainer to me.
Yeah, that makes tons of sense. With that, I would say, how long ago did you leave as the AD? I forget,
about a year and a half at this point.
About a year and a half ago. So obviously they just broke ground not too long ago. They're doing all the demo stuff, but the planning that goes into this from your point of view, I'm assuming that you have to do you want cash flow right away once it's built. So you're trying to plan out what's going to be there, what's going on, who's coming. You look at places like Spooky Nook that before COVID had the National Field Hockey Team, and some different big relationships that made sure that things were running and they had cash flow coming in for this incredible building that they bought outside of just the public. Is that something that you've just had to be doing over the last year and a half? Is that obviously when you look at something as being a general manager and we're talking about making minute decisions, now you're making year and a half in advance decisions. So just planning and doing that. What is the daily day-to-day look for you right now when you're really focusing on trying to build what it's going to be? Just because I don't have any idea. I can tell you what 99% of most people do at some point, knowing their job. But when you're planning something like that, what's it look like for you?
Yeah, I would say I've never been great at describing my day to day, no matter what job I've been in.
Understandable.
But it's been an interesting experience to me. I think timeline wise, I think some people might have thought that we'd be further along in the process now, and I think some of that's just when things get picked up in the media, and then there's just these expectations. But as I mentioned earlier, this is a big lift. This is something that you want to measure 7 times and cut once before you move forward with it. So, I would say there's been a lot of unique experiences for me. Just living in this side of the world on the architect and the facility planning, I give those guys a lot of credit for being willing to bring me on, in advance and be able to work with our pre-construction team, our architects, and really just make sure. I think I joke all the time that we're probably on, our floor plan is probably version 3,705 right now. We'll sit down, be like, oh yeah, couldn't get any better than this. Like this is 100% the best plan. And then 3 days later, we got something else going on. So I would say a lot of the initial time was spent in that. So we worked with a couple consultants. One is sports facilities companies. They're they're out of Clearwater. They probably manage and operate 50 sports complexes around the country at any given time, and have opened over, I think over 500. So they have a ton of experience and really kind of made sure that all the offerings, because we'll live in the world of sports tourism where we're hosting East Coast regional tournaments, but also community. So how do you have offerings for both of those and make sure that they're sustainable? Is it great to have maybe, Spooky Nook has 20 plus courts? That can be challenging then to fill on a weekly basis, So we feel like we're at a size where we've kind of tailored it specifically to what we want. That's a nice part about ground up construction compared to moving into a building like they did. But there was a ton of time that was spent in that. And it's funny that, everything kind of moves in lockstep. So as you're planning that space, you have to have conversations with a partner or a tenant that you might not finalize a deal with for another 1.5 to 2 years, but you want to make sure that space is right for them and it's what they're thinking. And, they're the expert in that industry, for example, like food and beverage. I'm certainly far from anything of managing that or having the knowledge of how to fit out a kitchen and what that looks like based on the number of visitors that we project.
Vital.
Yes, completely. Vital.
And probably good return.
You look at these things. That's probably one of the biggest bottom line drivers of those businesses. That's where it's kind of unique. That it's been a really fun experience for me. Just the building plan, looking at all those floor plans. But then, I would say the partnerships is a big side of it as well. And then really just the capital side of it too. So just really figuring out how to make that, capital stack work to the best of your advantage. So not only are we opening it, but it's sustainable and it's going to be something that's going to impact the community for a long time. And then just, I would say having the community try to get people on board and be champions with it. Like the York County Economic Alliance, we've developed a really good relationship with them, and they have a lot of good, insight and just connections throughout the community. Explore York, if you're familiar with them, they're the CVB. So they're doing that right now. They're bringing tournaments to the Expo Center, to different areas, trying to fit out whatever they can through different high schools. But, they'll have those relationships. So really just, one, solidifying those relationships in the space that's going to help us be successful, planning the space. And then I would say you're always, looking at your financial forecast, your modeling, you're writing those numbers in all the time. There's different things on the public funding side of things. RACP is something that we're in the process of right now. So we have a lobbying firm that we work with. So communication with them, your local, representatives.
So it is a grind.
Yeah. It's
every little
sounds
piece
easy.
is, yeah.
Yeah, it's unique because there
easy.
could be things where you're like, this is 100% the priority this day, right? And then 3 days later, like, no, this is 100% the priority. So having that leeway of time has certainly been beneficial. And that's one of those things with our consultants from the start. They said, hey, it's probably 2.5 years where you really want to have that planning before you're going to start to see like we're finally at the demo of this at this point. So,
which is going to be just I think it's going to be awesome for the community. I'm assuming that once you put up a new spot like that, not only are you probably having communication with what you can bring in, but people are going to start calling you.
Yeah.
Because based on what the facility looks like, what it can hold, how many. I mean, everybody wants to be in a new spot.
Yeah.
Which is always fun. Obviously, yesterday I think that whole thing came out. A little quick news article, but it looked cool. I mean, even when driving by it, like they said, you'd be able to see all the glass windows and pretty much see into it. So, I mean, that sounds like something that is just going to be drawing people's eyes to the area on a consistent. So, have they made a final decision on what it's going to look like based on that, or so everything's set, ready to rock?
Yeah, we have now. That's changed over time. You always look at that. Yeah.
And so can change probably 7 more times.
Sure.
Things don't.
Hopefully not 7 more times. But, at some point we got to say, hey, this is what it is. But no, I think, just kind of one, value engineering the building, and then looking at, it's going to be pre-engineered, precast building. What do those numbers start to come back with? You're obviously going to have the aesthetics. You're going to make it look as nice as possible, but sometimes there's parameters of what you can do with different buildings. But to jump to the location side of it, that's kind of probably where it started with John and Jeff. They had their eye on that land for, I think, probably, up to 5 years ago. Yeah. And it was
just sitting there.
Yeah. I mean, it's a prime spot. You don't get too many off 83, 30, centrally located to so many different things. I mean, York's a great spot for that. When you look at the sports tourism industry, everybody always tell you is draw a 4 to 6 hour circle around your location. And as many individuals as you have in that proximity, that's what you're working with for your tournaments. That's a pretty good spot for us, right?
That's
when
a phenomenal spot.
Yeah, when you look at those metropolitan. Yeah. So that's been great for us. The visibility, I think, has definitely attracted a lot of people.
Sure.
You have some different naming rights opportunities where, you start to calculate the impressions. Those numbers just don't even seem real to me when you're looking at those kinds of things.
It's going to be crazy.
But
I hope the North York Borough decides to switch over on short-term rentals. That would be great.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what, they have been great to work with for us. I mean, it's going to be something that's going to be great for their tax base, obviously.
Because as of right now, you can't. But having Airbnbs in that area right now would be
killer.
Obviously,
no doubt about it.
So don't put it on here because then Jeff and John will go buy them all.
We won't be able to have Airbnbs.
Yeah, they'll buy them all.
No, but that is, I mean, when you talk about this project, it's not something that they would probably venture into, and I know they want to venture into it. It's kind of, you call it a passion project a lot, which kind of sound crazy when you're talking about the price tag that comes along with those things. But if you just purely want to make money, you would probably do something more industrial, multifamily like we do. But, they've grown up in this area too. They've grown their business here. They're going to be here. So just as I mentioned about being passionate in athletics, fitness, health, it's something that they wanted to be able to give back to the community. And this is a great project. Obviously, I'm going to be biased, but truly it impacts the community in so many ways. I mean, you have the usage of it, which is a benefit, but then the economic impact that it brings to the area is phenomenal.
Yeah. Typically, I can't even imagine. I mean, it's going to change just everything. I mean, the restaurant world too. It's it's insane.
I mean, you just mentioned Airbnbs. Like, these are definitely catalysts for future development. So a lot of times you'll actually see, as we like travel around the East Coast, visit different facilities, talk to different individuals. A lot of these are largely publicly funded or a heavy public-private partnership when they're building these facilities. And that's purely just so they can have the benefits of the food and beverage, the overnight stays, the surrounding retail businesses, everything that comes with that. So for York to be able to get that, from the private side is a tremendous benefit to a lot of the things that are already taking place.
Yeah, that's huge. Now, obviously, there's lots of things that when you're doing something like this, you want to keep close to your chest. So just give us as much as information as you can. Like, is there a push for one or more sports that are going to be higher profiled in this building? Like, or is it
Yeah, because I think the Nook for the longest time was mostly field hockey. They were big
they in the back,
hockey.
and they had all those basketball courts, and I mean they do everything. It's crazy, and they have multiple facilities for everything, plus an arcade and whatever.
Yeah.
But I guess I'm assuming that with how much smaller it's like about.
So we're about just under 250,000 square feet. So the Nook, when you look at everything, is 700,000.
Okay. So like 30%.
Yeah. So which is a unique comp for us because the Spooky Nook, before they just opened a facility in Ohio about a year ago, which is actually larger than their one over here. But the one in Lancaster was the largest indoor sports complex in the country. Sure. So it's what a lot of people around here are familiar with. A 250,000 square foot building is
huge,
a good size.
Yeah,
for most. Sometimes we can have a skewed perspective, I think, just based on having.
And honestly, I like Spooky Nook, but it's hard. Like, it's miserable sometimes.
It's too much. I used to go to the gym there just as a normal gym. And
they're just
horrible.
bussing you.
Yeah.
It's almost impossible. Sometimes, like, if you need to get in there for weigh-ins or something for a rest, like when you got a full wrestling tournament with 1,000 kids, plus all those basketball courts running at the same time, plus field hockey, plus the gym. Plus it's sometimes you're just like, oh my gosh.
And they're having a ton of success.
Great job.
But, when you move into a building like that, sometimes it can be challenging. So they have so much space that, I was over there not too long ago and going through a little walkthrough, and they pulled back a curtain and just a huge space that basically is partitioned off so nobody sees it. Yeah, how big is this? 40,000 square feet of just space that's just not used right now, right? So when we try to value engineer this and look at revenue per square foot, all of those things, like if we have an area that's partitioned off that's 40,000 square feet, I probably won't be talking to you in a couple of years. So fair. But to jump back to when you talk about what the complex will look like, what's
going to be a focus.
So I would say the main focus, just because it lends itself to the tournament side as well, would be our hard court space. So that would be lined for 8 basketball courts, 16 volleyball courts laid over top. So that's 70,000 square feet of just hard court field house space.
Sure.
So I would say that's probably the main ones that you look at, just because, one, it's the courts are lined that way, right? So people always identify with it. Now that could be 24 plus wrestling mats,
Sure.
Well, even a couple more than that actually, or 24 pickleball courts could be closer to 40 wrestling mats.
Sure.
You can have cheer in there, dance, anything basically that you would play in a field house.
On hard courts. Yeah. Okay.
But I would say, it's probably going to lend itself more to that basketball, volleyball side, which you typically do a feasibility study. You look at the club programs within the area. And this is volleyball is huge around here. Very successful programs. So that space will probably be utilized for that the most. We'll also have a dome that's going to be 80,000 square feet. So, all your soccers, your field hockey, football. Flag football is becoming bigger and bigger now, and I think the PIAA is in the process of, having girls flag football be a
thing. An actual sport.
Recognized sport.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So
we need to start recruiting now for the men's league flag football. HHS flag football team.
We'll put you on there.
I'm all for that. I used to play up at Yellow Breeches, man, and those dudes went hard.
Oh, they
hard.
It's not really flag football though. Sometimes they're just like.
For some reason, and sorry to get off topic,
no,
just because. Just because, like, our team was like me, my brother, like, and a couple other guys that played football. I never played football, but like I'm athletic, and they have like blockers. Yes. Dude, these dudes run through you like you are nothing.
I believe that
they shouldn't be on flag football. court or fields, they should literally be suiting up, getting ready to get out there going against Jordan Mailata. Like, that is what needs to be done. I'm like,
Are they grown
Run
men or
like hell,
college
dude.
kids, or like what's it?
it's a mixture of both.
Combination.
Yeah.
Man, I've seen that. Like, I would get asked occasionally to play flag football as a quarterback
Yo,
forever, and
yeah.
I'm like, man, even at that position, I'm like that. I think I'm too old for that, man.
Yeah.
It's intense. You know, it's
And
a
they
Sunday
go-
morning at 8 o'clock, and you're
Oh,
like,
they go.
Yeah,
My
they're
buddy
ready.
plays it. I was
I remember one time I jumped up for a ball in the end zone.
just taken out. That's great.
It was like I didn't have flags on at all. I was like, you know what? You're done. Coming across the middle, Brian
I'm with that,
Dawkins,
though.
boom, done. I was like, yeah, I'm good here, man. I'm never coming
that's
back.
That's the problem is I can't get hurt now.
Exactly.
Right? And
Like,
it's much
and we
easier
get
to get
hurt.
hurt.
Yeah.
Right?
It's
Yeah,
like,
5 years ago when I did it, it was a little bit better when I was, 25, 26.
when you get actually hurt nowadays,
Yeah.
and it's like shit.
Yeah.
I'm gonna lose a whole week of work if I can't walk.
Yeah, I feel like I can get better as I get older, right? But if I go back and play, like then I gotta tell myself
Yeah.
maybe I wouldn't be able to do that. Like,
Well, yeah,
but I can tell myself in my head.
Well, I completely understand. Now you just brought that up. You played quarterback. How do you think like athletics in general? I mean, probably on the planning side, I didn't really even think about that. Quarterbacks are usually the smartest guys on the field most of the time, and have a lot of planning and understanding and reading. But how has athletics, you think, put you in this position? How can you relate some of the things that you've learned from athletics into stepping into this general manager, especially once things are up and running? How do you? I mean, I'm assuming that you're going to be focused on athletes and there's going to be more than just tournaments there. There'll be training and doing all types of other stuff. How is that stuff going to help you, over time? And
Well, for me personally, I would say, I think it's probably true of any position or anybody that wants to be successful, but, I've learned it through athletics is probably preparation and work ethic, right? So I think that, helps you, especially in this process when you're planning forward and, just trying to dial things in. But then relationships as well. If you're going to be a quarterback or any kind of leadership position on any team, you got to have those relationships. That comes through some of the work ethics so people can respect you. If you're going to ask something to somebody, like they got to pretty much know that you're going to be able to do that and not go, wait, you weren't at those workouts, 3 days all summer, so why are you asking me to do this now? But I think, so the relational side, the work ethic, the planning, but athletics itself, I think just being so ingrained in that culture and that environment, youth sports, I know your kids are involved in them. They're just growing and growing. So I listened to a podcast the other day, which I appreciate you guys having me on. I'm a big podcast guy. But, somebody said it's like the new Keeping Up with the Joneses, right? So it's not the new boat, the vacation house. It's what experience can you give your kids in youth sports, because you got people having their family vacations around this. They call them tournications, right? So they're just going somewhere every other weekend, 3 nights, staying overnight, extending those stays, so the industry is growing. Like it's projected to be $70 billion industry, I think, by 2027. Yeah. So that all sounds great for us opening up a sports complex. At the same time, you have this other component where you almost have a barrier to entry with it, right? Sure. And you don't want it to start to be, something where, it's a haves and have-nots kind of, or there's this barrier to entry where there's a lot of statistics out there that if your household median income isn't X by the time that you're 8 or 9 years old, your participation chances drop by 30 to 40%.
That's crazy.
Which is horrible to me, right? We're talking about everything that athletics have done in our lives. Like a big driver of this complex will be to make sure that we have that access to play, just to fall in love with the game. That doesn't mean that you need to, be the next Tom Brady, the next, whoever it is, even go to college, even play in high school, for God's sakes. Yeah. Just have a chance to fall in love with it, create some lifelong habits, healthy routines, make some friends. And I think we've gotten away from that a little bit. You don't need to be 8 years old and going to Texas, Georgia, every other weekend. Like just learn to have fun with the game and fall in love with it.
I literally tell people all the time that club baseball, like all these, honestly, they're not special anymore. They're just who has the money to be on the team.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah.
Like there's kids on some of these teams where I'm just like, you shouldn't play rec ball. And I don't mean that in like a me, but like it's just turned into a business.
Yep.
And there's I look at York County and I look at Dauphin County and just areas around us where District 3 in general over the years has excelled in a lot of different sports. Sure. I mean, obviously you have District 7 and you have like some of the bigger districts like District 3 that continue to, in all of the bigger sports, do well. But it is crazy to me that we have like 32 clubs and not but none of them are really great. You know, like, because there's 32 of them.
Yep.
If you took a 12U York County baseball team, like my son, and said, hey, we're not going to have 30 clubs.
Yes.
We're going to have a York County baseball best in the county. That team would be really, really good. And that would be worth paying for and traveling for. And your kids would have something to work for. Now we've diluted the club world so much that it's just a business. And it's so painful to watch okay, well, we can't make that team, but if we make we'll make this team because not many people are trying out for this team, and they're not going to be that good, but at least I can say that my kid plays travel ball.
Yep. Right.
And I'm like, that's not the point here.
No, and I think that's a pain point for me, right? So, you know, the barrier to entry is very low to create a new club team, right? So you have a bad experience, your kid might not play as much as you want him to, and a lot of times it's the parent driving this, right?
100%.
The kid's not making the decision.
Yes.
You know, then you're playing at the wrong developmental level. So either you're playing teams that are much better than you when you're going out and playing tournaments, and who wants to, you know, go
Just
out
get
and get
rocked
killed all the
and
time?
stuff.
Yeah, I'm not going to do this
Isn't that
next
what you
year.
guys are
Yeah,
dealing
like-
with?
What's that?
I don't even want to talk about that squad. There's one squad that he plays with every now and then, my son, and it's just like, man, like, dad's decided that that's what they were going to do, and then they put this, and I'm just like, this is our last season being there. But
Well, and it's not uncommon, you know, and that's the thing. Like, you know, most of these clubs, they pop up for 3 years, then they dissolve, right? Because it was one parent, their kid's done. You know, so that's one thing that we will have in the complex. Like, you know, we'll have club organizations that will come in and partner with us and be, you know, under the umbrella, because a lot of them, you know, they don't have homes, especially if it's, you know, an indoor sport. You're bouncing around to a church, a high school, you know, some kind of community recreation center. Yeah, you have a practice 3 different spots all 3 days of the week, and that becomes tough logistically for parents, coaches, storage, you know, just all kind of stuff like that. So, you know, that's a differentiating factor for when you have some of those clubs that do want to kind of take that next step. That may already be doing a good job, but then just really want to be able to excel, or, you know, have those correct tiers where, hey, maybe they're cutting 70 kids because they can only have you know, so many teams at a certain age group because they just don't have the facilities to have those practices.
Sure.
So for us to be able to create that infrastructure for them, have some more succession plans in place, so it's not just a, you know, pop up for 3 years, then it's gone. You know, we want to be able to have that experience where we're also bringing in the character development, helping them with recruiting. You know, all those things that can kind of fall to the wayside when it's just, hey, we're going to go out there and play. That's all we got to do. If we just play a lot of games, we're going to get really good, and that's all that it matters.
So false.
100% incorrect, right? Be process-driven, you know, focus on the things that are actually important about sports. And if you do those a lot of times, what you want at the end of the day is those wins, that success, like that'll come along with it. But we don't have to force anything. Like we always want that instant gratification, you know. And I can see, like, hey, I'm not a parent at this time yet, but I could see how you could get caught up in that very quickly. You only want the best for your kids. I think it's good intentions most of the time.
Yes.
Maybe flawed execution, but
Well, I think that, like, I think parents get this idea of, like, this results-driven mentality. And just like you said, like, it's tough to be in a situation now where a kid throws, for me, obviously it's baseball season right now, but with my son, but kid throws somebody out from right field. Going to third, throws him out from right field, and everything about the throw was wrong. Yeah. He was out of position, but he still threw him out. Everyone's like, yeah, great play. And you're like, well, your feet weren't set right. 9 out of 10 times you're going to miss that throw. Mm-hmm. 7 out of 10 times you're going to miss that throw because you're not doing it correctly. Same with ground balls. Same with the way people are hitting. Like, yeah, I can. If somebody throws me 10 fastballs straight down the middle of the plate and I close my eyes and swing, I might hit one. Yeah. It's not that. And I feel like the biggest struggle is they put these kids that don't have any process. Mm-hmm. They just want these instantaneous results. So, all right, we'll play a lower level ball, travel ball, so we can get wins, but we're not going to have anybody that can coach them, and we don't have any mental preparation, and we don't have anything that involves athletics at all, really. Mm-hmm. We're just here to be like, my kid plays travel.
Yep. Man, you're on a topic now that I could spend about 7 days talking about. And you nailed it when you talked about results-driven. I mean, that's something that I think even myself I've come a long way with. And I think that athletic director role really helped me with that too, just being involved with so many different programs and coaches. And we've had great coaches that I think still struggle with that even at the high school level, where you know, the process is truly what it's all about. And when you come so, you know, the results, they don't always mean the correct thing. Like I jumped back to my dad wouldn't even let me play football until I was thinking 6th or 7th grade. You know, I probably carried football around with me since I was 4 years old. Like it's all I wanted to do. But at the end of the day, he also knew, hey, maybe it might not be the right coach, and you might get some guy that thinks he's, you know, John Madden, and he's going to be yelling, screaming when you're 3rd grade, and
for sure,
like, you know, turns you off from the sport, right? So when I came in, it was also a unique thing where some of his best friends that he went to high school with grew up, coached me on that first team, right?
Yep.
And it was probably pretty clear I might end up being a quarterback, you know, could have some success in that position. You know, I think I started as a tight end and a nose guard, you know, and my dad never said a word, never would have known that it was an issue, right? Yep. Like go out there, get in a 3-point stance and, you know, be the best that you can be. And that's all it's about. And that was his best friends. Like he might have said, hey, you think like maybe we can get him in the quarterback drills instead of like nose guards? But like, I think back on that now, had no like realization of anything about that at that age. But I give him a lot of like respect for that. Sure. And I think it helped me develop a ton just because now it's just so many, like we got to push things. We got to make them happen. Like they'll happen organically if you commit to those processes. And I think that's one thing where when we talk about the partnerships and what I'm doing right now is there might be a club team that has 50 programs, right? That might sound attractive because they can bring a lot of rentals and business into the facility. You know, but we're not going to sacrifice partnerships for somebody that doesn't have that same vision as us because when we talk about the facility and the success of it, you know, if the success only happens under the roof of that building, like we'll have failed with our job. Like we want this to impact the environment of athletics, you know, health, fitness in the area, you know, and you know, down throughout York County. Like you talked about District 3. We've met with, you know, the leadership of the YAIA, and we'll continue to do that and probably start some of those conversations more. And, you know, how can we impact that? How can we make those championships events a little bit better, even if it's not at our facility? Like, how can we partner in some of those situations? How can we use our resources, leverage our resources to maximize the potential of what they're doing on that side? Because, you know, there's a ton of opportunity, and that's not to take away, you know, anything from anybody, but those jobs can get busy sometimes, and you know, having some of the access to different things that you have in the private side, I think can definitely help leverage that. So it truly is a project that's meant to, you know, just really help shape the environment.
That's awesome. I guess another question with that would be, like, with clubs that might be is there going to be access for locals? Is there going to, like, Spooky Nook has memberships?
Yes.
You know, like is there going to be clubs that can buy time on a field or on a court or whatever it may be that's going on there? And again, I don't know if that's something.
Sure. Yeah. And you know, we'll continue to iron things out, and you know, even after we're open for 3 years, we'll still, you know, I'm sure refine things. But you know, the way that we're looking at it right now from an operations side, you know, if we're talking more so that weekly community business, like I said, we partner with those club programs. So when you're looking at the playing surfaces, you know, so you'd have your club volleyball team, your club basketball team, you know, wrestling. We've talked to some different individuals about, you know, dance programs, all kind of things. So you would want to have those partnerships that might have priority scheduling just because of the agreement that you come to with them. But the amount of space we have, you're definitely going to have outside rentals too. So, you know, it might be a program that's not underneath your umbrella, but at the same time, there's definitely going to be opportunities to rent space. And then from the membership side, you know, a large component to this, which I think sets us a little bit different. It's comparable to the Nook, but we'll have a large health, wellness, fitness approach to the facility as well. So, you know, that's going to be a big driver to the sustainability, the yearly revenue for us. So we want to take a holistic approach to that, which I think is becoming the trend everywhere with that. The term one-stop shop gets thrown around a lot. I don't know if I love it, but it's very true. Like, I can't think of a better one, so I keep using it. Yeah. So, you know, we'll have a membership fitness gym that will be 20,000 square feet. So that's comparable to your Crunch, LA Fitnesses, you know, Gold's Gyms. Yeah. Obviously, we'll put our own touch on that. We'll have a sports performance training facility that's about 7,000 square feet. So that's like your college weight rooms where you look at that open space, squat racks, turf area. You know, it's going to be a heavily utilized athletic facility. So, you know, that's going to be a huge driver for us. But then at the same time, to kind of round out those components, you know, we'll have a large healthcare partnership where, you know, if you're on the membership fitness side, or if you go in for physical therapy, because they'll have physical occupational therapy, there'll be a tenant there. It's one of those things where a lot of times I think somebody gets injured, they go in, they do their PT, their insurance runs out. They probably haven't been fully healed necessarily. Yeah. You know, and you might get a workout plan. Hey, go join your local gym, continue to do these. Well, a lot of people never want to step foot in a gym, right? They might have got injured doing whatever, and, you know, they just have this I don't know if it's a fear, anxiety, or just don't enjoy it. Well, now you've been coming in the same doors every single day for 2 months to go do your physical therapy. On the healthcare side, can that physical therapist have a conversation with the personal training side and have that continuity of care where you feel like somebody actually understands what you're doing? And even on the opposite side, right? If your personal trainer's working with somebody and they're doing this thing with their shoulder, it's like, what do you got going on there, man? Like, hey, let me shoot a text to the PT that's 100 feet away from us. Let me get you an appointment tomorrow, get that checked out. So, having that, just bridging the gap between that healthcare and fitness side of things would be huge for us.
Which usually a lot of time is lost in translation.
For sure. Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, you talk to a PT person and a personal fitness guy, and sometimes they're not even on the same page. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's because the focuses are different.
Yeah, for sure. And that's one, hiring the right people and just making sure that those lines of communication are always open, because that's value-based care, right? That's actually, I feel like sometimes I've been in different situations. If I have surgery, there could be one nurse that comes in, and then 30 minutes later, another one comes in. I'm like, did anybody talk? I don't, like, is anybody? Are you familiar with what's going on here? So, I think just in myself, like I like to take that analytical approach, make sure that I'm doing things for a reason, not just wasting time. So, I definitely see a lot of benefit to that. The recovery space, like we'll have, your hot and cold therapies in there, so saunas, cold plunges, compression, like IVs, that has just become such a boom in the industry now. So to be able to do that, when you sit down with somebody for the first time and you're going through a health assessment and saying, hey, what are your goals? We want to have something that you can prescribe for everybody, right? Sure. So a lot of times you can't just fix everything by going to the gym 5 days a week. We're talking about correcting some of those issues that you've had that have been, giving you different movement compensations, take care of that knee injury. Get dialed in with the right nutrients. We have a chiropractor that's on site. If you need to get adjusted, you're able to take care of that. So I think being able to round out all of those different components is definitely nice. So you're not driving across town for one thing. Yeah. And then you even look at that on the parent side, right? So your kid's coming in to play a club sport for 2 hours. I've walked through York Suburban's parking lot many nights where I see somebody just scrolling through their phone in the car because they don't want to drive home 15 minutes, drive back 15 minutes. Time's of the essence for everybody, right? Sure. So, how do you get them to go in? It would be ideal for them to all go in and work out, during that practice time. That's not going to happen all the time. Maybe you go to the chiropractor, right? Maybe, you come in and have a meal, and we have the food and beverage space. We'll have conference rooms that will adjust to like open working space. So, pop your laptop open, get some work done, and just be able to utilize that time. So really, when we plan the facility, you try to think about every user's experience. So whether that's a tournament and you're an official coming in, you're an event organizer, you're a coach, athlete, parent, how can you maximize the experience for everybody and their time? So
you have a good coach's room for tournaments with like good
that's
food?
The thing, right? Like that's all I care about. The hospitality rooms, man. The hospitality rooms are a hit. But that's a big part of it. I mean, when you look at these event organizers, like, there are other facilities that are around when you talk about that 4 to 6 hour radius. And there's some things that are differentiating factors that set you apart. One is space. Like we've got that 8 basketball, 16 volleyball court. We honed in on that because that's basically what the industry tells you need to be at. Yeah, you got to be at. But then you talk about hardwood maple courts. Like, that's going to be one of those things compared to some of your laminates, compared to, I can't even think of.
Yeah, they do it right. Yes. That's never an issue with Jeff.
No doubt. If you look at this, we're definitely gonna, aesthetically it'll be pleasing. Yes. All those things will be planned out. But those are things that might sound small, having an officials room, having somewhere to go, but that's stuff that's gonna.
It's huge.
Yeah. I mean, spectator space, like when you talk about the Nook, like some of the things that we, the benefit is they have kids going through these tournaments as well. So you're sitting there and you're going, damn, what would I want to do differently? Mm-hmm. Well, we have a lot more spectator space, even just on the courts. So you have that close access. There's nothing more frustrating than spending 12 hours in a gym and you can barely see your kid when they are playing because of the access points or where you're trying to watch them from. Also creates a little proximity control if you've ever been in there. Yeah. Environments can get heated a little bit. So separating space and course are always nice. But to have that extra viewing space so your spectators are coming back is huge. But yeah, I mean, those are definitely things that you have to take into consideration.
And what's that? And maybe this is not something that's been totally figured out yet. Maybe it is. What's that look like? Is there going to be like bleachers or like? That's just a weird thought process. But when you said all the places, I am blown away when I go to the Giant Center for the state tournament.
Yes, and
like people don't know because most everybody sit. But when you go underneath, I mean, they got spots for everything. Yeah. Mm-hmm. They got their newsroom for people that are with taking photos and news. They have officials room. They have all this different area and so much space that you wouldn't even know was down there for warming up and getting ready, and locker rooms and like just so much stuff going on down there. But I believe, in my personal opinion, is there's not really too many bad seats in the Giants Center.
No,
Obviously it's not built just for athletics. I mean, there's a bunch of things there. Is what's seating going to be like? Is that something that is finished or thought about?
Oh, yeah.
Obviously. So what's that look like?
So we'll have the bleachers on the court as well. So basically, when I say create extra space, so say a lot of times with 8 basketball, 16 volleyball courts, you might come in at like 63 to 64,000 square feet.
Sure.
We're at 70,000 square feet. So that means we've created some extra space between the courts where you can have bleachers basically right on the sidelines where you're on those. We'll also have a mezzanine, so on a second floor there where you're going to have that viewing from above, which is nice because you'll also have nicer lounge type area up there. But then just the separate spots as well, like adaptable space is key. It has to be flexible. Yeah. So one day it might be a party room, but then it's going to be an event organizer spot. It's going to be an official's room. It's going to be a coach's hospitality room. So planning that space out to where you're not too constricted to what those offerings have to be is critical for us, because we will live in two different worlds of basically kind of that weekly business and then that weekend business as well. So yeah, a lot of that, like I said, is just kind of tailoring on the experience for each guest that you walk through. And that's having those conversations with the club directors to the event organizers to like, hey, take a look at these floor plans. What would you change about this? Like, what am I missing? What opportunity are we not going to be able to be involved in because of this space right now? Because that's the last thing that you want to do is close yourself off to any kind of business. Like, for example, volleyball. Like, you got to have 10 feet, essentially, is what they typically say, behind the serve line. So when you have courts backing up to each other, if you don't have 20 feet between those courts, just because you weren't thinking about that and you have 16, well, guess what? Now you're not going to have some of your larger club volleyball tournaments coming to your facility because of 4 feet that you screwed up. So it's all those kind of like the minutia, like some of those details that you have to look into.
Makes perfect sense.
But yeah, so food and beverage wise, spectator space, like that's a big differentiating factor for us. Fortunately, we've had a lot of great conversations, and it looks like we'll have involvement from some food and beverage operators that that's a big thing for people. Like I hate when I stand in line somewhere and I might just want water, and I've been there for 15 minutes and I haven't moved. Like, I'm just hopping out line.
Every time.
That experience is huge for people. So all those things that you just try to partner with people that are experienced.
How many facilities did you guys walk?
Man, I would say, gosh, when you think about just tournaments that you go to, just on
I'm just wondering, you've probably seen so many different food and beverage.
We went to a bunch specifically just to tour those, like the sports facilities companies.
Kind of see what works and what doesn't.
They referred to us, so we were in Ohio, New Jersey, Chicago, up and down the East Coast. Yeah. And, that was one that really started to define that food and beverage space for us. And just how big of an opportunity that is. And even, someone on the alcohol side, like if you would have said to me when I started this thing, alcohol and youth sports, like, no, don't make that happen. Now, don't get me wrong. There's a lot of like different criteria and parameters that you have to put around that. But, it's the understanding from the industry that's 100%, something that happens at a lot of those spaces.
Oh, especially long.
Kind of still the deal for me when someone's like, the people that are going to drink, like, they're drinking at these tournaments anyway. Like, sidelines. Like, those Yetis aren't.
100%
in there. So,
and that's the truth, because they're in there all day sometimes. You know what I mean? And if they want to just have like the one thing I always loved about them though is that if you're in there for a long time, like they have that little restaurant.
Yes.
And they have their area where you can go get like quick food in there, but like the restaurant and bar area where you can actually get real food. And I think that like in between breaks, people go. That place is packed,
100%.
And it's not like people are just getting banged up, but exactly. You know what I mean? They're having a drink with their
they're adults that are going to go in there. And, even if it's a practice night, right? You go in there, you get a dinner, you get a drink. You're watching games on the TV. It's just an environment where it's kind of like, you ever hear of the concept of third place that Starbucks uses? So you spend all your time at 3 places. So work, home, and you have a third place.
Yep.
So when your kids are in youth sports, like typically it's going to be around their athletics.
100%.
So, how can you make that third place as accommodating as possible? So one person could be alcohol, the other person might be the chiropractor. I don't know.
100%.
There's different
I agree.
opportunities
that's awesome
for everybody.
And you said earlier about the staycation.
Yes.
you know,
it was a
travel.
tournication, right?
Tournication. Yeah, it's
like both of them. Yeah.
But what's that? York, obviously, being from there, like I think that there's. Is there? You think that the effect on that, like, we're talking about baseball right now. We're talking about going to Myrtle Beach.
Yeah.
Obviously, York's not going to be Myrtle Beach. You don't have a beach there. But do you think that is going, like, people looking at that area as these tournaments start coming in, as it starts filling up? Do you think things are going to start popping up that are giving people things to do outside of that stadium area? Is that like something that's? I mean, there's only so much to do in York.
That's 100% the goal and the initiative, and I think. You know, there's a lot of things to direct people to now. I also think that you'll see things start to pop up because of those opportunities. Like I said, you know, you typically these could be a catalyst for future development just because of, you know, for us with the sports complex, if we were solely dependent on the community's use of it and we had a 250,000 square foot building, like that would be naive to think that plan was going to work.
Sure.
If we were just purely living on the, you know, sports tourism side and didn't have the fitness components and all those things from a community standpoint, it would fail as well. But to be dependent on both those things is big. And I think when you talk about, hey, we're not going to be able to go to Myrtle Beach, no, but you know, how do we direct people to those areas in York? Whether it's maybe it's the trails that we have, maybe it's, you know, one that we talk about is the York Revolution, right? If I'm captured in a gym all day in the summer, and typically I'm going to want to stay with my team, I'm going to be somewhere in the surrounding area. You know, why don't we all go to a baseball game? Maybe we rent out the 1741 room or you know, one of the private event rooms that they have. So we're still hanging out as a team. We're hanging out as parents. We're getting some of that family entertainment in. And there's a variety of different aspects to that. But that's something that we want to be really specific about directing people to and not just having them kind of having to find it on their own or venture out. Now, some of that's going to be dependent on the other businesses, right? Like they're going to have some involvement in that and push that. But, yeah, those are things that we talk about a lot. Even, you know, I think of York College, Penn State, York, some of those areas being able to really benefit. You have, you know, 150 plus teams of high school age kids coming in from out of the area. And how do we get them to take a quick visit over to the college? You know, they're over there. I mean, if you can't capitalize on that with at least a few kids, you know, you're missing out. The 100%. Economic Alliance did a pretty cool study for us. So they have this like AI placer tracing kind of thing, which is kind of scary a little bit now, but like, you can tell it
is nutty.
It's insane. So like I've just come to the fact that I'm just going to give you all my information, show me what clothes I want to buy. It makes it easier.
Exactly. Like, they do too. They give me everything I want. It's amazing.
But what they can do with that, so when they were able to get data from Spooky Nook. So when you go to Spooky Nook, you can see where someone goes directly afterwards, how long they're staying there. Like I said, it's a little bit scary, but
that is
I can't remember the name of the restaurant that they chose, but they said if, you know, out of all the visitors that go to Spooky Nook, if 0.19% of individuals would go to this restaurant annually, that would turn into, and they bought a cheeseburger, I think, and a chicken finger basket. That was it. It was like a $24 spend, which is pretty minimal for a family that's probably going there.
For sure.
I think they would come out to like $55,000 in annual revenue. So that's not something that's going to make your business, but that's something that you're going to probably look at the bottom line and notice that if it's not there. And that's a very conservative number of individuals going there from the Nook, and also, you know, their spend. So, you know, some of those things, like when I say about just being a community project as well, like it truly was thought out and meant for that. Yeah. You could argue on paper, if we would have 4 courts and shrink that field house size by 35,000 square feet, your financial forecast might look a little better, but you would lose that impact on the community, which is something that has been the intent of John and Jeff and the ownership there from the
forever.
So,
It is crazy.
It is kind of crazy, honestly. Like I said, I give them a ton of credit, and I think, you know, I do because they won't take it and you know, or promote
everything they're doing. I mean, I really like both of them, and you know, I think that their goal is that, you know, and completely across the board. I'm excited to see what it does. I guess last couple questions here for you. What's the toughest thing you've had to deal with going? Like, what's been something you've had to overcome and a challenge you guys have been dealing with just getting into this and deciding that this is what you wanted to do as the general manager? I mean, you're making huge decisions based on the community and things like that. What's been some of the challenges that you've had to face and overcome?
That's a good question. I would say probably just the design of the building to start with, just because that ties into the overall cost of the project, right? No. When you're looking at some of those things where, you know, it's your first one, right? Like I think anytime that you do something the first time, like the second one, you probably go, oh, that, you know, definitely have some things that I've learned there. So you try to speed up that learning process as much as possible by talking to people, but you're still forecasting everything, right?
Sure.
You know, when we talk about some of the spends or annual visitors, like, you know, it's not a guarantee until you get into it those first couple of years. So how can you put yourself in position to make that as clear as possible, right? That your projections are going to come to fruition. And I think that's a tough world to live in sometimes when it's kind of like talking in hypotheticals.
Yeah.
But I think just value engineering that, where you have 250,000 square feet, you would think, hey, I got room for pretty much everything.
Yeah.
But man, you don't. Like, you're getting down there and you're like, can I shrink this 25 feet? Like, you know, that sounds crazy, but it's like you're trying to get all those different components in there, give them the right space to be successful. You know, I think that's been an exercise. That's probably why we're on version 3000, you know, plus.
Yeah,
So
sure.
I would say that's probably been the most difficult. I think, you know, some of those, as we get into a little bit closer, will be on the operations side, who you do end up identifying as partners, because, you know, we've had a lot of good conversations, and there's going to be some good people that are, or companies that are, you know, both want some of the same positions that you'll have to identify and, you know, just make a decision and go with. So,
Definitely.
you know, that's always tough, because you want to be able to support and you know, enhance the business of anybody that you're working with and have a lot of respect for. But yeah, right now I would just say just really trying to make those numbers as real as possible. With, you know, just living in the planning stages.
Makes sense. And then one more would be, what's the aspirations that you guys have? What's this look like 5 years from now? I'm with any business plan, and you don't have to tell me the inside look of like dollars or anything like that, but like from your perspective as the general manager, and we know that it's going to have, the goal is to have an impact on the community, but for athletes, for people that are going to be involved in this and using this facility, what does it look like 5 years from now, 10 years from now? What's the goal that you guys have, or you have as the GM, to grow this into and make it?
Yeah, one I would say is probably just a hub for, you know, like-minded people to come in and just really enhance themselves, work on themselves, better themselves. You know, so you're finding that way to maximize your potential as a person,
Sure.
You know, however that looks. But then it's had some of that surrounding impact. You're starting to see some different things pop up, businesses flourish. I mean, you see some restaurants pop up and close in downtown New York. Just, you know, the operators are doing a great job, but maybe we just don't have enough individuals to support them.
No.
So we're bringing some of that outside money in, that tourism dollars that can help sustain and support some of that. You know, to get into the nitty gritty a little bit as far as the projections, you know, we should be having 5,000 fitness members that are coming in there. Awesome. You know, really flourishing on that side, your sports performance side. That's not even counting your athletes coming through the doors there. You know, you should be at 40 plus tournaments a year. So you're having somebody come in every single weekend. That's probably looking at, you know, 3,000 plus visitors based on the teams that you have come in.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and you start to see some of that surrounding development. And then that's, you know, it's the education side to it. I'm not naive, and you're not going to course correct everything that we talked about. That are some of the challenges. But how are we getting the message out that, hey, this is probably a pretty good curriculum or developmental process to how you should approach sports, you know, for your kids. And, you know, I think even the recruiting side of it, which is probably a minimal thing to talk about, but man, that's a foreign thing for a lot of people.
Exposure and figuring out.
Yeah, just going through it where, hey, if you're not doing the right things for the clearinghouse when you're in ninth grade, you know, you could be taking a bunch of different classes or putting yourself in a bad position to even qualify or get into different schools. How am I making the decision? What school do I want to go to? So, you know, we want to be an ecosystem where kids that have graduated, gone through, you know, I think of Bo Bueller right now, I think of Eli Brooks, you know, all closely connected to the facility. How do we have them come back and give their message and say, hey, this is how I made my decision. This is maybe things I would change when I went through the recruiting process. Here's what I wasn't expecting about college. You know, I had a college coach that runs a thing called a fifth quarter, right? And he would always have alumni come back from different professions, business world, to talk to the current players.
Sure.
You know, so you're doing that networking, but you're also helping prepare them. So creating that ecosystem where we're giving back, and it's really, you know, continues to enhance the spotlight on athletics.
That's
because,
awesome.
man, I think you should really give a lot of recognition to the people involved, the coaches, the people that are spending their time doing those things. You know, how do we make it so that they stay involved? Because I think it's really concerning where you start to see people getting away from it, right? That extra time of being an official. Hey, I don't want to get yelled at anymore. Like, you know, how do we just enhance those environments so it's sustainable? You know, because I truly worry about that on the back end. Like, hey, coaches are getting out of it because of the time, the demands on it, you know, the officials. Like, how do we try to help that ecosystem, at least in this very specific surrounding area, which is hard enough? Like, you know, if you look at it on a large scale nationally, I don't know. I don't have the answers to all those things. But I think just, you know, really kind of almost taking a step back, but also moving forward with where, we're putting the respect in place for the right values. I think that align with sports.
That's awesome. Last question would be, I think this is a thing we talk about all the time, mental toughness of kids nowadays. I don't care what anybody says. There's a huge difference.
Yep.
And a understanding of social media, and they see all these people, getting drafted out of high school or doing all this stuff, and they don't see any of the behind-the-scenes work and what it really takes. What is that going to be any part of the process? You look at some of these teams, and we were watching the Phillies in the World Series last year, and they were introducing every single person, and they have like a mental toughness coach.
We already have,
you know what I mean?
That's something that we already have made a hire in that. We'll continue to grow that out. But yeah, mental performance side, just for so many different reasons, like you said, if it's mental toughness, if it's dealing with the anxiety side, if it's teamwork, if it's just kind of channeling yourself to create different processes to make yourself the best athlete that you can, that's just become more and more prevalent. We say kids have changed a little bit, but the world's changed, right? So
yeah, agreed.
We need to try to meet them where they are, and but also not have kids not participate because of maybe the fear of failure or some of those different roadblocks that they're facing right now, because I think that's a very real thing. So how do we learn to give tools for the rest of your life to combat with those? So that's why I talk about.
And when I say kids change, I mean more the fact of it's tough. Like, I remember if I would have went home when I played sport and cried to my dad about my coach, my dad would have been like,
yeah,
stop being a bitch.
Yeah, pretty much. You know what I mean? I don't care.
Coach is right.
That's what coach said.
Yeah.
Deal with it. Now it's the exact opposite.
Yes.
15
and it's the
phone
same with
calls
refs.
and
You know, if I would have snapped on a ref, my dad would have walked out on the field and drug me off the field.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And now it's just common.
If I did something wrong in school or anything, I was trying to do anything I possibly could to hide that situation.
For sure.
Like, I think I can remember a certain situation. They had dial-up internet then, right? I knew a phone call might come home. I was on dial-up internet for a week.
That loud noise every day after you got home.
But now it's funny, whether I was in the school system or just seeing it different times. Now it's I'm going to my parent right away so they can come in and say why I shouldn't get in trouble. And that's a screwed up dynamic to it too. And coaches, like, you were coached, no matter if you were a good coach, not a good coach. Now
you're the coach,
prove yourself to me before I even call you a coach, or I think about you in those lines. So, is there a sense that I think a coach should always, they probably should be developing that relationship and that respect a little bit more? Sure, but you should also walk with that line of respect, to start with.
100%. 100%.
Yeah.
Last question we ask pretty much everyone. Any life lessons or skills that you've learned throughout your athletic career or your just life in general, that if you could talk to 14-year-old Matt before he steps into
14-year-old Matt might have been smarter than
or just advice for anybody that's just living life that you have held close to your heart, close to your chest, that's made an impact on why and what you do.
Man, first I probably come back to relationships. I think those are everything. Pour into them, respect them, make sure no matter how busy life is that you're aligning yourself with people that you care about, that you respect, and they know that you're there for them, and vice versa. That's going to come back to you, and that's going to keep you fulfilled, keep you a driving force and momentum for you. And I would just say accountability and ownership. I think a lot of times, we want to pass the buck sometimes now because it's not comfortable if you're the one that screwed up, but I think taking ownership and just absorbing that, even if it's not your fault. How can you always say, hey, I could have done this differently, because it's going to make you better in the long run, right? It might feel good in the moment to be able to, I got away with that one, right? Mm-hmm. But, I think always being able to self-reflect and take that time to do that so you're bettering yourself in a process or just making better decisions. I think that was always a big thing, and probably one of my biggest takeaways in sports is just that accountability side. It might be the film don't lie thing, or I had a coach that always used to say, if you turn your palms up, that you would cut your hands off. So it's like, he's like, hey, you did it, right? Like, don't turn them up. So I think that always sticks with me, in the long run.
Never heard that one.
What's that?
Turn your palms up.
Oh, man, he threw a couple other explosives in there, too. And I was like, I'm pretty sure he might have. So that was like the concern.
That was
part.
the very best part about it.
So what's going to get you guys to the complex?
Man, I'm excited about it.
Flag football?
Yeah, definitely flag football.
I'm
Are you guys going to have any ice rink or anything like that?
We won't have an ice rink. No.
It's a hockey.
I mean, grew up playing ice
now we
hockey.
might have
So.
to. See, that's the tough part right now.
See, but you also have down the road though. There you have York Arena, but
Yes.
they only have two. Like they used to be a bit when I was growing up. They used to be a big place because they were like one of the only places in the area that had more than one rink. But they just it hasn't been. I don't think quite what it was, especially when I was growing up. And again, kind of like you said, when I played on, God, years ago, there was before college 4 decent teams in the country. Like that was what you strive to be. Now it's like 54. Yeah. So, it might be. It's probably stupid expensive and to try and do something like that, but might be a possibility. But I don't need I don't need the ice rink because I don't really play much anymore. I'd rather do flag football. So
There you go. No, and I think honestly for me it's just exciting to have stuff going on as a coach, as a dad of 2 boys that play sports. I've put a lot of time into a lot of different kids in the area and spent a lot of time in youth sports and from different school districts and just I think to watch and have something that is not. The Nook is great, but I love the idea of having something that's here. Every now and then, it's like they did the Tyrant National Tournament at the York Expo Center this past year, and it was nice to be able
Frederick's guy we've talked to a lot.
Wake up and be there,
walk across
at my house. You know what I mean?
That's the other side of it, right? So we talk about the tournications coming in.
Yeah.
It's also not having to travel somewhere, right? Yeah. And take your time, your money. Now, like Tyron Dolt, like we've talked with Corey a bunch about, hey, when the facility's on board, that he has interest in bringing events here. So that's one where.
Great guy, too. Runs a great tournament. They do a really, really good job. And it's even cooler for me. Obviously, Pennsylvania is the best wrestling state in the country. Hands down every single year. There's not even, it's not close. When it comes to All-Americans, it's usually double any other state.
Yep.
So having that access in different places and being able to do different things and having these, all these school districts around here that, honestly, when I grew up, District D3 was the mid-pen. Mm-hmm. Like when it came to wrestling, York was not even in the conversation. And Dallastown every now and then, but outside of that, it was far and few between. There was, kids sprinkled in and out when growing up, both the Albrights and, Jason Holler, some Red Line guys. But, it was a mid-pen thing. Yeah. And now you have District 3 that's even getting better and better and better in all these different areas. So it's exciting for me. For me personally, I'm excited about, all the things that I didn't even know was going to be there that you just told me. As you get older, things just feel a little different. And
Tell me about it.
Recovery time is a little bit more painful, and I know there's lots of different ways to work out. Mm-hmm. You just do I really want to go out of my way to track somebody down to go find out, how I should be better on my shoulders or my knees at this point in my life? No, I really don't want to. I'll just do what I was doing and deal with a little bit of pain. If it's there and accessible, I think that there's a way to age and stay healthy. And I think a lot of people don't know that. So it's going to be a big play in, that.
There's the social dynamics of it too. You know, having the feel of where you're coming in there with your friends, and instead of maybe checking out or maybe going to the bar instead, right? Like, hey, let's get together and go to the gym afterwards and feel a heck of a lot better the next day. Yeah. Right? And have a drink. Yeah, there you go. I love it. That's how collaborations.
So super excited. I really appreciate your time. I know that you've probably been getting hounded left and right all over the place, but just learning about it. I know lots of people had questions, so I think honestly this will probably be a podcast a lot of people listen to just to hear about what everything is going on.
I think
your answers have been great. It's awesome to hear what this is going to feel like, how excited you are about it. Like I can hear your passion when you're talking about it. And, I've talked to Jeff and many times, and when he loves something, he speaks with passion too. He's just in it. And I love that you're part of that and just bringing that same passion to what you're doing, and really excited to see how this changes the landscape of York County and athletics and exposure for our area. You know, when you have a place like that, I'm assuming that you even have some college coaches checking in here and there, you know, just coming in to watch a workout or do some. So I think there's just going to be a lot of things that have not been accessible over the last forever that are now going to be hands-on right in front of your face, and it's going to be so helpful to, you know, the school districts around here, coaches around here, the community around here, and even some, you know, like you said, some kids that might not be in a position to pay big money, but have that easy reach where they can be brought in by somebody, you know, from Inchico Sports or whatever it is.
I should say that, you know, we'll have different programs to help subsidize costs for different things, you know, working with different companies and that have already expressed interest in being able to help with that. So again, coming back to that access to play, that there's not that barrier to entry, and, you know, that's not, it's a business. You still got to be able to charge some things, but how can we create, you know, the opportunity for everybody that's not going to be something that's going to prevent you from ever using the facility. Yeah. So, and I appreciate you saying all that. I appreciate what you guys are doing too. When you say about people listening to this one, I've listened to plenty of your podcasts before.
Thanks.
Thank you. You guys are doing a great job.
We're having fun and enjoying it, you know. And if you guys are in the midst of it, if you don't mind trying to turn North York Borough into, you know, a short-term rental area, that'd be phenomenal, so I can get busy. But, you know, it is what it is, and we appreciate everything you guys are doing. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. Absolutely.
And guys, if you check in next week, any other time, every Monday, you know the deal. We drop a new episode every Monday morning.
Monday night, 6 p.m.
Not anymore. We changed it to Monday morning. Yeah, so we don't have to wait anymore. You
Great
don't have
way
to
to
wait.
start the
week. Sorry, exactly.
You don't have to wait. You
Set
can
the alarm.
drive to work in the morning on Monday, and you can listen to the next episode. So thanks again for joining us. Check us out next week on The Real Podcast.